All right, well, thanks for joining us here today. My name's Andy Howard. I'm the Managing Director of Howard & Associates, which is a consulting company that focuses on IP communications, specifically video conferencing and video streaming, and helping organizations deploy that technology. We've got a panel of esteemed speakers here today. We've got Jeff Williams from Oracle, who's going to give kind of the end user perspective on what Oracle's doing to implement video and specifically mobile video in the Oracle environment. We have Mike Newman from Polycom, who will give sort of the broader market perspective of what Polycom kind of sees in the marketplace, and Mike Benson from Ramp, who also will provide sort of the vendor perspective on what they Ramp sees in the marketplace as well. We have about an hour here, so we're going until 12:30. So I'd like to keep this interactive if possible. Feel free to ask questions as we're going along. Jump in anytime you feel you have a relevant question. So again, I'm Andy Howard. My company's Howard & Associates. I help a number of large organizations deploy video communications. Specifically, the projects I've worked on with a streaming component, as well as a mobile video component, would be Aetna and Deloitte. Those are both large, kind of CEO broadcast type applications where the organization was using older technologies, Windows Media technologies, and looking to move to the future with H.264 and being able to deliver content to mobile devices. So I can touch on those applications a little bit later if we have time. I also advise startups in the space, specifically in the video space, and also provide strategy and marketing advice to vendors. So Mike Benson got left off, the panelist. He was a late addition for us here. So what we want to, the kind of the major trends you're going to see us talking about here are, what's going on with mobile video. Obviously, it's big on the internet. We saw with NFL Now, everything that's going on with like HBO Go and things like that. However, in the enterprise, the deployment, the interest certainly seems to be there, but the deployments are lagging, and there's a variety of reasons for that, which we'll get into as we go along. Then, in terms of applications, one of the things is, well, is mobile video really just another way of viewing video, or are there specific things you can do with mobile video that's different than just what you would typically do with a PC or a Mac? And then I think that what we'll focus on the most here are really some of the deployment challenges. So there's a proliferation of devices. They're changing all the time. There's all sorts of varieties of different transport mechanisms. It seems like for mobile video, HLS is kind of winning the battle for that, which can be delivered to both iOS devices as well as Android. Networking is one of the things that I see with my clients is one of their biggest challenges, is how do I get the people to be able to access this content, because there's no longer the ability to plug the device into the wall, so you have to be going over the wireless network. Multicast is not really an option with this mobile video, so when you're doing, for example, a large webcast, you've got a lot of people pulling individual streams, so you need to be careful of how the network is set up to enable that when it's hundreds and thousands and tens of thousands of people. File management, again, there's a lot of, once you start generating multi-bit rate streams to do adaptive bit rate, there's a lot more files that you now need to take care of. There's, kind of the battle between apps and the browser. I think at this point it seems to me as if apps are kind of winning that battle. And then there's a lot of security questions that go into place. And specifically, I think Jeff's going to talk about that experience at Oracle, which is one of the primary things that's sort of holding back their deployment. And so this is just a quick graphic about the 3G, 4G versus Wi-Fi. A lot of organizations are saying, well, I'll just have my people access the video content over 4G, but there's a couple problems with that. One is the data plans are not unlimited anymore, so you could chew a lot of data down doing that. And additionally, the throughput on that is still not that great. But if you are going to do, stream the content on your internal network, you really need to make sure that your Wi-Fi network is set up properly for that, that it can support all the traffic that's going to be going through it, as well as you have a caching infrastructure in place as well. All right, so I'm going to hand this off to Jeff right now, and Jeff will give you the Oracle perspective on what's happening at Oracle.
Yeah, so I work for Oracle in the internal IT department as an IT director and a product evangelist, and my responsibilities are driving awareness and increasing adoption of our internal IT services to the company internally, helping internal customers extract value from our IT services, and then understanding what our customer needs are and challenges are for using internal IT products, and then using that information, going back with our implementation teams to improve the products and the services to ensure that we're meeting the corporate needs. So when Dan Rayburn reached out to me and asked me to participate in this panel, I looked at the description and thought, okay, we have an enterprise video platform. We just deployed it, but it is not yet compatible for mobile. You cannot play back video on mobile devices yet. So what would I have to share? And then speaking with Andy last week, he said that's actually a pretty common thing. Mobile for enterprise video is a challenge, I guess, for a lot of companies. It's been a challenge for us. And so I'll kind of share where we're at in our journey to enable playback and content contribution from mobile devices on our internal enterprise video platform. So first I'll share that journey with you. Then I have a couple visuals and screenshots, and then I can go into more depth about our enterprise video platform if you're interested, but we don't necessarily need to go there. So 2+ years ago, we had growing demand within the company for sharing and distributing video content. But we had no easy way, no standard platform and way to do it. So we had people uploading files and using file sharing services, ones external to Oracle that we didn't approve, like Dropbox and things like that, to internal file shares. And then we had some organizations, some lines of businesses within Oracle, start creating their own platforms that would meet their needs. But these platforms weren't scalable, they weren't easily supportable, they were definitely not cost effective because we had a lot of similar platforms that met similar needs, but we're paying twice in some cases. These weren't secure, and again, they duplicated a lot of functionality. Mm-hmm. So we saw that need and realized we need to come up with and deploy an official platform to the whole company and meet all the various needs of our stakeholders or LOBs across Oracle. And so we launched a project to deliver an enterprise video platform that this was our mission statement actually, the enterprise video service would enable employees, executives, and organizations to find, share, and create high quality video content. And these were our priorities going into it. Our number one priority, I don't know if you remember, but a few years ago, Oracle's slogan was unbreakable. And so everything we do, especially IT related inside the company, has to be absolutely secure. And so that was our number one priority. Whatever we do with video content, especially content when you start talking about end users, employees within the company that aren't necessarily thinking about the reach that the video that they create might have, we have to make sure that that content, where it's stored and as it's transported and streamed devices, was completely secure. We also wanted to make sure that the user experience was really good. It was an excellent user experience such that no matter what device or system you're accessing, no matter where you are located in the world, the platform itself is really easy to use. It's easy to create content, upload content, distribute content, determine who and how to get that content to specific groups of people. The other priority for us was that we wanted to go desktop before mobile. So desktop was our priority initially. Just because most of our user base we knew would be accessing content from desktop. would be creating content on desktops. So mobile wasn't as important, especially 2+ years ago for us. The other was that we didn't have a standard platform for distributing videos outside of Oracle as well, but we wanted to focus first on the need to distribute within Oracle. So an enterprise video platform to distribute content from Oracle employees to other Oracle employees. So internal was our first priority. We also wanted it to be cost effective. So we quantified how much it was. We were spending across the company on these multiple disparate platforms, and we wanted to try to come in below that. It wasn't a huge priority to come in below that, but we definitely wanted it to be a cost-effective solution, especially as we start scaling the solution. And then scalability was another important thing for us. We've been watching the trends. Cisco has been telling us, other companies have been telling us that video is on the rise, video within the enterprise is on the rise, and we wanted to make sure that as that started to pick up over time, that we had a solution that would be robust and scalable. So we launched this project, and the first thing we did was we spent some time defining our business requirements and kind of articulating the use cases within the enterprise for enterprise video. I just came back from a session actually talking about how to select an enterprise video vendor, and I wish I had attended that session before we started because we did exactly what he told us not to do in that last session, which was we started at very technical details, and we didn't really get to talking about and articulating use cases and and specific, outlining a narrative for what we want our user experience to be like until far too late in the game. I still think we probably would have ended up with the same vendor though, so we probably good luck on that on our part there. So then we went into an RFP process. We selected a vendor. We did a proof of concept. Then we did a pilot where we picked our key stakeholders that were pushing for this platform most within Oracle and did a small scale pilot with them just to vet out the platform, make sure it was working well and meeting their needs. And then we launched our production platform internally back in September. So it's pretty new for us. Our next steps in our journey are to deploy an external platform. It would be separate but based on the same technology to enable playback and upload and contribution from mobile devices, and then to implement some new features and enhancement requests. So of course, as we deploy a platform like this and a lot more people are starting to use it, there's a lot of new use cases and needs that are arising and a lot of feedback we're getting about the platform. So that's the next step for us, is to make some of those enhancements. So where we're at today, we're a little over 2 months into our production deployment. Right now, our initial utilization is really good. We're seeing a pretty quick uptake in the number of videos being viewed, the number of videos being uploaded.
What are the applications like? Are they big webcasts, or is it user generated content?
Yeah,
is it
so
training?
we have quite a mix. So we have some all hands webcast type things that we're doing. We have a lot of executive communication. So an executive doing like a R&R, like rewards and recognition kind of like speech to quarter end messages, to new quarter or fiscal year messages coming from executives to their entire organization. We have an organization that's doing mandatory product training where they want their entire organization to go through this extensive product training, and they're doing it all through our enterprise video platform, and that's working really well. We're doing new hire training now, so so as a new employee joins Oracle, they start by watching a short video from our president and then HR director and a few other people, and then they go into a series of videos that kind of acclimates them to Oracle before they then get into their more specific stuff for their job. We've got topical presentations, so SMEs across Oracle that have the need to share information about specific topics, and they need to do, in the past they would need to do multiple separate sessions live using things like WebEx. Now they're able to record their session directly into our enterprise video platform, just using their webcam, tie that together with slides, and deliver that content on demand, and that's working really well. We're also doing sales enablement, so we've got we actually have something called a sales academy at Oracle, that is trying some new progressive things with sales, and one of the things they're doing is using video pretty heavily in their training process, where they're watching video content, but they're also producing video content, and they're getting the opportunity to kind of critique each other on their presentations and their approaches and things like that. And we've even got some salespeople creating kind of their own little promotional videos. And they're using this enterprise video platform, and that's working really well, and it's actually pretty fun. It's something that a lot of our new, younger sales generation is really enjoying at Oracle.
So it's like they're doing like game tape for
Yeah,
sales
exactly.
presentations.
A little bit of that.
Go back and review your
Yeah.
game tape.
Exactly. And then another cool thing is that we're using it for our contact centers, initially internally at Oracle, but we're going to start doing this and offering this externally as well. We have, in the past, knowledge-based articles, how to fix this and address and solve this problem. We're starting to upscale and improve those articles, that knowledge documentation, with video, where it makes sense. So in the past, if you needed to communicate a concept, you needed to say, step 1, click on this link. Step 2, type in this box. Step 3, it would take a technical writer some time to sit down and write a document like that and to get it right and precise. We're finding that with video, you can have pretty much any of our support analysts sit down and just record a little screencast of the same process, and it's a lot faster and easier for them to produce that knowledge and distribute it over video. It doesn't make sense for everything, but it makes sense for certain things, and so we're starting to embed videos within our knowledge documentation and then make that searchable and then tie that to our ticketing system, and that's working really well also.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's go to the next one. So these are the components of our secure content delivery solution at Oracle. So again, I mentioned that one of our top priorities was it being secure. So we're using our corporate SSO to authenticate users first, and we have Oracle employees as well as Oracle partners and customers using the same SSO platform. So we're able to use that SSO and validate that a person is an employee before they're allowed into our enterprise video platform. And then once they're in, we can do role-based authorization where we can make it so that certain users only have access to certain content. So we can say you're within this organization, so you're allowed to see all the public content plus the content that's specific to your organization. Or they may be part of special projects and things like that that may have their own content repositories, so they may be granted access to that. So we have kind of role-based authorization. And then for streaming the content, we're using player verification. So right now we're only allowing the player that our vendor gives us, which is a flash-based player, to play back our media. And so we're using Swift verification to verify that only our approved player within the browser is allowed to play our video content, so that it can't be kind of hijacked and used and played on different players. And we're using protected HDS for encrypting the video stream, so it's not sitting on the platform encrypted. We're able to leave all of our files in the various flavors, the various levels of bit rates, leave all that unencrypted, and then we encrypt it using protected HDS when we're streaming. The challenges we're having is that first and foremost, the one player that works, the flash-based player right now that's from our vendor that is secure is flash only, so that excludes iOS devices and most Android devices. And we didn't think that would be a big deal because mobile wasn't raised as a high priority when we started the project, but immediately out of the gate, everyone's saying, why isn't this working on mobile? Even our CIO, day one, he brought it up on his iPad and said, how come I can't play videos on my iPad? And we said, well, it wasn't a priority for us. It was getting it available on desktop first. But we're getting a lot of feedback within the company that people want to consume the content over mobile. So we realize we have to deliver that solution sooner rather than later. So we're looking at our options. I actually added another slide that I didn't get to put in here at the last minute, but it was just so basically, if you think of a triangle, 3 sides. You have mobile, you have secure, and you have accessible. So, having a player that's accessible to people that may be blind or deaf or whatever. We're finding that we can't have all three. Pick two. It can either be secure and accessible, or available on mobile and secure but not accessible, or mobile and accessible but not secure. That's been our challenge. Right now, that's kind of where we're at. So we're working with our vendor to come up with a solution where we can deploy and meet all of our requirements. And what we're looking at right now is using protected HLS instead of HTS. And that's in testing, that's working pretty well for iOS devices, but it's been a little bit more challenging with Android. And so we're still kind of working through that. And that's kind of where we're at right now. We hope to deliver the solution in the next calendar year, early calendar year, when our vendor delivers a new player that's HTML5 based that meets a lot of our secure requirements and uses the protected HLS stream. So that's kind of our journey. So I'll share a couple screenshots of what our platform looks like. This is from a desktop browser, Safari on a Mac. So this is our home page. We have a rotating carousel at the top, and then as you scroll down the page, we have kind of most viewed, most liked, most recent video content. Go to the next slide. This is what the player looks like. You'll note that that bar below the video is pretty tall, pretty wide. Accessibility was another requirement for us. We wanted to make our platform and our video accessible. And the player that we got from our vendor, the only one that was accessible was this one that looks kind of ugly. So this player works. You can control it with a keyboard, but it looks ugly. We've gotten a lot of feedback from people saying, why don't you just use the thing like YouTube where it fades out the controls? So that's something we hope to deliver with an HTML5 player in the future. So this is what it looks like when you're playing back video. To go to the next slide, this is what accessing the platform from mobile devices looks like. On the left, that's an iPhone. On the right, that's an iPad. So we are allowing logging in and looking at the platform and commenting on videos from mobile devices. But, next slide, if you try to play a video, you get this message. Which basically
so you're teasing them.
Yeah, a little bit, a little bit.
That's good though. But I mean, at least you're being upfront. Like a lot of people, I think, just say, "Well, we're not supporting it, so the browser's just gonna, put up an error message or something."
Well, that's actually what happened. The week before we were going to go live, one of our stakeholder executives tried to access from an iPhone and was confused as to why it wasn't working, because we did have it enabled during our pilot, because our pilot wasn't secure. So we had our HTML5 player that was not secure turned on. And so he was able to access video content from his iPhone before, but as soon as we went production and we narrowed it down to the Flash-based player only, we had to turn off the HTML5 player that wasn't secure, and he could no longer play his videos. And he said he was confused. Why can't I play it? I would just expect this to work. So we took that feedback and got this message up before going live to hopefully avoid that question in the future. So that's pretty much it with our journey. I do have some more details specifically about our platform if you're interested. But how about
why don't we roll on, and then we can come back to that if we have more time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So I will jump over to Mike's slide.
So really quickly, before I jump into my presentation, and maybe Mike Benson wants to join in since we're both taking kind of a vendor perspective, does anybody at this point want to ask Jeff any questions before we leave the subject that are top of mind?
We can go back to class afterwards. Was most of your solution custom made, custom built? Was some of it like out of the box, just slightly customized? What was the?
Yeah, so we took an out-of-box solution. We tried to keep it as vanilla as possible. But then as we started looking at our list of business requirements, we realized there was a lot of customizations that we needed. We tried to meet most of those needs without making major changes to the platform. we ended up having to make a lot of changes anyway. And now we're at the point where every time our vendor releases a new version of their software, we have 6 months worth of basically development work that has to be done to catch up and implement all of our, our changes. Which that's another big challenge for us. That's a good question. So it's definitely a vanilla platform that's been tweaked quite a bit.
So are you trying to push the vendor to actually build that capability into their standard builds?
A lot of these things, these changes that we're making are things that you would think are just sort of intuitive, like things you would expect the platform to just already incorporate. So we are working with them to build a lot of those into the future, but they do yearly releases, and we got a lot of these requests in. It's going to be a couple of years, so we can't wait that long.
What's your live to VOD percentage that you're doing on the platform, and then also from the CDN perspective, are you doing mostly dynamic caption of musician content or videos?
So first question, the ratio between live and on demand. So the platform I showed you isn't doing live yet. It's only doing on demand. We haven't turned on the live aspect of it yet. So we're still using kind of older solutions, and we're still working to kind of bring the live into the new platform. So right now it's all on demand. We've tested it and it works, but we just have a few kinks to work out. And then the type of CDN we're using, I'm not, to be honest, I'm not technical enough to answer that question, but we're utilizing kind of two separate CDNs. We're building our own CDN internally for people that are users that are accessing our platform from within Oracle, and then we're caching all that content on every one of those CDNs. So I don't know which of those does that sound like.
Well, dynamic caption basically refreshes it by an algorithm and pre-positions like that in the video of server count and graphics.
Okay.
It's kind of like how much space we have in the server.
I think we're doing the latter. And then, but if David Boyle is here, he probably can answer that question. My colleague from marketing, I don't see him. And then we're also utilizing an Akamai CDN for people that are accessing our platform from outside of our intranet. Any other questions?
What kind of analytics do you have?
Yeah, so analytics are definitely very important to our stakeholders. Within the platform itself, within the web interface, we're offering very basic analytics, just number of views, number of likes, number of comments. If you build a channel, a content grouping, you can get a little bit more specific and see the number of unique viewers and a list of the people that have watched your video. And we're working now to actually build a separate analytics dashboard that just utilizes the APIs that our vendor has given us, and then we're going to offer all that through kind of a separate interface, because that's not, robust analytics is not something that our vendor offers built into their user interface. And then with where that's concerned, we're pretty much everything you could imagine, we're gathering and making that information available.
All right, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Well, by way of introduction, unlike Jeff, Dan Rayburn didn't ask me to be on this panel. Forced Andy to put me on this panel. Prior to becoming Vice President and GM at Polycom, I was a CEO and co-founder of a company named Accordant that spent about 10 years in the streaming space, focused predominantly on video content management for enterprises. So I'm kind of a denizen of the space. I'd say the opinions expressed herein are probably my own and not Polycom's. So I'll start off by saying, I think Jeff spoke really eloquently about sort of a holistic view, but then also some unique technical challenges that come with the deployment of streaming media to mobile. As a vendor and as someone who's very into product management and into anticipation of challenges, we're forced to look at it heavier on the holistic side. And so, this is probably a lot of information that many of you have come across, and you've thought about the challenges in maybe a similar way, but I wanted to touch on them. What I think is a distinct starting place for the environment of mobility is that most enterprises have already made a significant investment to streaming to a desktop. And so it's dangerous to just think about this as an appendage to an already released strategy. It can be, trying to write a paper with someone else's table of contents. And so, when we go into an enterprise, even if it's a legacy customer, a video conferencing customer of Polycom's, let's take a step back and make sure we do understand the nature of the challenges and your position or your philosophies regarding those challenges. So I'll just go down this list. You've probably all had time to read down them, but at the risk of being redundant, everybody talks about the proliferation of devices, the democratization of content creation or content consumption, and with that sometimes comes a shift in the balance of power, from a monarchy to a democracy, and I think each organization will have a unique philosophy about that change. They can ignore it, they can embrace it, they can be conservative about it. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer, but there's clearly going to be a tension between something that is centralized and something that's democratized, and it's really important for the group that's evaluating what they want to accomplish and why to have their head around that and to have a consistent strategy. Something that's, I think, unique to the mobile space is just the pace of change and the origin of change. It's no longer, we're on a 2-year release cycle. We're on a 1-year release cycle. We're on a Web 2.0 release cycle. These things are coming from everywhere. And so, what we encourage enterprises to do is be very, very discriminating about the things they want to control, the things they can keep pace with, and the areas in which you essentially acknowledge we cannot keep pace. So how do we accommodate that risk? And as a vendor, I can tell you, Polycom has been in the business for 25 years, and for us to try to keep up with the pace of change in certain areas of technology innovation, absolutely impossible. We could not get a PRD done, we could not get an MRD done, we couldn't even get through beta in the time it takes some of these technologies to come to market and be widely adopted. So, this is kind of a vendor's perspective, but we share your pain. The identity of the purchaser is something that's very interesting because we would deal with a head of corporate communications, we'd deal with a head of IT, we would deal with people who, like marionette players, exacted a ton of control over what infrastructure was being used, who was accessing it, and when. And all of a sudden you're on a hey, I got this for Christmas and I want to use it. It's just a different type of purchaser, consumer versus purchaser. And that leads to the next, or segues to the next bullet, which is the pace of adoption. It's very, very difficult to regulate. Once you acknowledge these mobile devices are out there, they're important. Even the people most central to the organization are expecting to use things that they've gotten from their wives or their spouses or siblings or whomever it might be. I can't tell you how frightening it was for us when we were at Accordant to hear, okay, the CEO just got an iPad and is expecting to be able to watch video on that, and it was like, wait, you guys didn't sanction that. What are you going? You got to push back on that, but it's not going to happen because there's people at the top paying the bills.
I think that's one of the things that is a little bit different about this is that the device usage is actually being driven by the top. Often it's the executive, it's the CIO, or somebody saying, why can't I view this on my iPad? That's what I use for everything. And in fact, I've heard in a lot of cases, a lot of executives are not going with laptops anymore. So you have to be able to support mobile devices. So it's kind of instead of the consumer coming up, it's the executives coming down and saying, I got to have this. And then you have to deliver it, whether immediately or shortly thereafter.
Yeah, exactly. And so you have a grassroots campaign demanding, we need this and we need that support, but you also at the executive level are hearing many of the same things. And then, this is something we see all the time at Polycom, which is somebody is sitting in front of a device. This is not their subject matter expertise. They're not technologists. And they want to be able to go from a video conference, which is a live meeting they're participating in, to viewing a presentation, to creating an archive presentation, and they're not thinking about it in terms of what are the different technology components that I need to support that. And as a vendor, do you take the approach of making that a seamless use case? I mean, okay, you can just jump around indiscriminately, or is that something that's driven by an enterprise? Hey, these use cases are acceptable. We've thought, very diligently about what risks these create and so forth. So, I don't bring these up to solve any problems. I bring them up because I believe this is a very, very unique environment. I believe based on pace, proliferation, adoption rates, it poses some very interesting and unique problems, which even if you think you're streaming very successfully to the desktop within the enterprise environment and you're getting your content out to remote offices, it's still a unique beast, which doesn't make any one approach right or wrong. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll just cruise through these really quickly. And Mike, certainly, I know we share some of the same experiences, so
you're doing a great
jump
job.
in.
Just keep going.
I'm one fan. As far as what I'm seeing, and it used to be that all this innovation was great. It meant that people would have to buy more frequently. You could have releases more frequently, but at some point it gets so fast that you need to draw lines in the sand and say, we'll catch up at these points, or we're going to partner, and those people will own, this area, and we'll go to market together, because there's simply no way. I mean, it might be something like virus protection, where a new virus is coming out every 2 days. You're not going to have a full-blown version release. You can't even issue updates quick enough, unless you're an absolute specialist in that area. So I think it's a really important reality, and I think your response to it, is going to be individual. Certainly as a vendor, we've acknowledged we just can't keep pace in certain areas, and I think that's a smart acknowledgement. There's nothing dumber than getting to market, 3 months too late because you got caught up in a beta cycle. From my perspective, and again, I said these are my opinions, I really don't think most vendors know what the next big thing is, to the extent they're trying to help enterprises deal with an entire ecosystem of solutions. I mean, where these things are coming from, I mean, even in my brief time at Polycom, I was like, oh my gosh, we have Jive and Yammer, and are people going to be doing like Snapchat, and what's the next hot thing? And it wasn't, what people lost sight of is what is the utility, what is the use case, what are the goals of the enterprise? And so I think, if there's a theme to these slides, it's really about discipline. Because I can tell you, when you have hundreds and hundreds of salespeople coming to you as a product manager telling you need something because it's going to help them close a deal, it takes a lot of discipline, and you don't make a lot of friends. And then the last one, and this is one I've thought a lot about, is that the consumer is device competent. And I know within the video conferencing space, as easy as we have tried to make things, and as automated as we have tried to make things, and we've tried in the streaming space as well, it's still a lot of white glove service. There's still a lot of fear. And when people say, oh, don't worry about it, you'll just deploy an ECDN and we'll cache some stuff here, and their eyes glaze over because it's not their subject matter expertise. But if you talk to them about a wireless network or downloading an update to their phone or something like that, that's all very, very natural. And even in some industries, this enables the enterprise to communicate in ways they couldn't before. For instance, in retail, there's certain segments of retail where it was always going to be to a designated screen hung on a wall because they didn't trust their employees enough, or their employees weren't tenured enough to have devices given to them. Well, now all the employees have devices. It opens up great new ways of communication that didn't exist before. So, it's not all doom and gloom. There's some great opportunities. As far as just some key considerations, I always go back to this because people lose sight of it. And I think Jeff kind of hit it very candidly and with humility, which is, we dove into the technical. And, you really got to ensure your framework for deployment is relevant. It's current. You've asked all the right questions, or most of them. And you have all the stopgap measures in place to say, hey, if we mess up over here, at least it's contained to this area, and we've got some good metrics to measure some success, and we have accountability. And then I think there's, being very honest with yourself about what the personality of your organization is. Are you a thought leader? Is it important to be the latest and greatest? Even as a vendor, we don't necessarily pride ourselves on always having the latest and greatest. It might be quality, it might be price, it might be some other differentiation. And then again, going through just with discipline for each use case, is mobility that important? Are you going to get the ROI? Are there security concerns, standardization concerns? Just the usual questions. And then the area I think is most interesting as an enterprise procurement person or someone rolling this out is, how do you avoid obsolescence? I mean, you don't want to spend money that by the time you actually get the thing deployed, people are looking at it as a has-been technology. And that's why I say I think people with subject matter expertise, I know there are a lot of people here with that expertise, and Andy's one of them, that can help you compartmentalize where there's rapid rates of adoption and things that can be locked down and investments where you can get 3 to 5 years return or lifespan out of those investments. So, I won't have the specifics that Jeff has on, wow, we ran into this trying, this player in this environment. We would look at it more from just a framework of anticipating the deployment challenges. Mike, I don't know if I stepped on some things you were going to talk to. Or?
Nope, you did a great job.
Thank you. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike, go
All
ahead.
right, so thank you. I'm Mike Benson. I, like Mike Newman, have been doing video stuff for a long time, really been putting video out across networks since the early 90s. I am the Vice President of Sales for Ramp, and I'm sort of overwhelmed with the desire to want to sell right now after hearing both of the stories that Jeff laid out and Mike laid out. There's an awful lot that my really neat company solves of those problems that they talked about. So please come by our booth and you'll get the pitch there. What I thought I would just touch on, since Mike really did a great job of laying it out from a vendor perspective and Jeff from a customer perspective, is I just wanted to focus in kind of on one thing that Jeff mentioned, which was I think the initial goal of your project was to be able to find, create, and share the content, right?
That's right.
So that's one of the really neat things that Ramp does is with mobile content, particularly as a creation device, everybody pulls their phone out. I literally, when Andy called me 5 minutes ago, I had my phone out taking a video of the beach to show my friends that are freezing back east that I was at the beach today. That everybody's going to create content and they want to be able to put it up in there. So Ramp has deep experience in both search technology and speech-to-text technology, where we create these rich metadata sets and these navigation tools to be able to find a given piece of content so that as these really diverse set of mobile devices, or really anything where people are creating content, have a way to go into the system through a series of approvals and workflows like Jeff talked about, but then be able to actually find that content and navigate specifically to that spot. Because what we hear from our customers, particularly that are using mobile devices to generate content, is you end up with this big hodgepodge of stuff stored, kind of like Jeff said. It started off on Dropbox and in shared drives and whatever. Well, simply aggregating them into one location is probably a bit of an improvement, but it's not enough. It's not really usable content unless you can find the exact thing it is that you're looking for and be able to navigate specifically to that spot, so you're not having to watch long videos to be able to get to that kind of stuff. So I guess that was really the main thing that I wanted to talk about. I think Mike kind of hit on everything else. So. And by the way, Andy just grabbed me outside because I'm the only one with a tie on here. I think he had a cancellation or something, so I think that was...
We're in California here, it's casual.
I think that's how I got it. So he just asked me a few minutes ago, so I don't have slides or anything prepared.
Well, thanks for filling in there, Mike.
Sure.
So I have a couple more. So we've heard from sort of the end customer perspective, and then the vendor perspectives of sort of the bigger picture. I've got a couple more examples of engagements that I've worked on that I think are going to mirror what Jeff said a lot. So the first is for a large professional services firm, it's a consulting firm. It's surprising to me, I've also been in this space for, I don't know, since 1999, and it's surprising how many organizations are still streaming in Windows Media because it works really well. I mean, the quality is not that good. There's some limitations. The fact that it only runs on Windows PCs is probably the biggest one. So what a lot of organizations are saying is that this mobile initiative allows you to what Mike said, take a step back and look at the bigger picture and say, what are we really trying to solve? And really have a chance to do a full analysis like Jeff did in order to say, you know, here's where we need to go, not what we've been doing, and we just need to have better video quality. So, you know, this firm was in that camp where their network was multicast enabled end-to-end. So also a lot of these large organizations that are doing, you know, major webcasts, it's a lot of multicast. So again, when you come in with mobile devices, multicast doesn't work anymore. So if you're talking, there's going to be tens to hundreds of people maybe watching on a mobile device, that's one thing. But if you're going from thousands to tens of thousands of people all pulling a unicast stream onto those mobile devices, that can be a problem in a hurry. And a lot of people are very worried about that. And I think that's one of the major things that's you know, pulling people back. So, you know, what we sort of outlined for this organization was, well, we're just going to do PCs and Macs first because I had a big webcast coming up, and they wanted to, you know, to get this all in place in like a 3-month cycle. And of course, what happened was an executive came in and said, I'm not going to be able to watch this on my iPad. And they said no. And then that quickly changed. The requirement quickly changed to we need to support iPads. So what happened was they had to do a quick network analysis. The wireless network was just recently upgraded, although there were certain locations that needed to be upgraded on a faster refresh cycle. But they also needed to put in basically an eCDN into all their offices because they have 400 offices around the country. So it turned into a major deployment of caching technology into those offices because so that, you know, one stream could come down to the office, then it could get stream split or cached for on demand and served up locally in order to reduce the traffic on the WAN. So another example here is, you know, a healthcare organization that I work with. Again, they built a homegrown Windows Media solution in 1999, and they're still using it. It still works incredibly well. They stream live the CEO broadcast to 20,000 people simultaneously, but the quality is really low. It doesn't support mobile devices. It specifically they've got a lot of virtual machines, virtual desktops in their environment, and that's been very challenging with their current setup as well. And it is a homegrown solution, so like Mike was talking about, not only can the vendors not keep up with the pace of change, but if you have a homegrown solution, trying to keep up with the pace of change is almost impossible, you know, with one guy that really knows the whole system, which is the way that it was there. Again, they have, you know, multicast enabled end-to-end network. You know, they don't even allow any video content at all on their wireless network today, because again, for that same reason, they're concerned about the amount of traffic it's going to add. That's going to change. The mobile devices today can't even get on the network other than to get their email. So there's changes that are going to go on to that. And then a lot of the iPads and stuff use mobile device management and virtual machines on those devices as well, so it sort of mimics a PC interface. So that had to be integrated into the solution. So the end result is this is a very complicated deployment. It's still in process, but there definitely is the move towards supporting those mobile devices. And again, in this scenario, the executives are starting to there's a team of executives that are not using laptops anymore. So it's all, you know, all they do is iPads, and they have to be able to view this content. So that's a big driver. So I think, there's obviously some common themes that we're seeing in all these examples. But at this point, I want to open it up to questions and answers. Hopefully good answers. Lots of questions. Anybody have any questions? There we go.
You spoke about features for the consumer. What about the operational side for the IT guys who are how important are those for the consumer decisions?
In terms of decision making for how the platform.
So you spoke a lot about we want to tackle this individual devices, the other devices, but you just have an example of deploying a massive network of equipment to be able to support it. Someone needs to support that, where they factor in the requirements.
I see. Yeah. So our enterprise video deployment at Oracle was developed by our IT department. So our networking team and our support team, service desk, all of them were pretty highly involved throughout the entire process.
So what's the additional overhead on that team for support?
So far, not a lot. So far, it's pretty, in terms of comparison to other IT services, it's pretty low so far. I don't have specific numbers, but it's pretty low.
I think one of the things that organizations do get in trouble with, though, is when they go on one of these initiatives, they don't think about who's going to manage this thing, right? So Mike Benson and I used to work at a company, and they had great ideas. They had, they purchased all the equipment, and then they got it, and they're like, what do we do with it? And who's going to manage this? And what are we going to do with all this content? How are we going to back it up? All those questions. You really need to ask those questions up front and have a plan for who's going to address those moving forward, or you're going to end up with with a lot of problems.
One of the things that RAMP does to try to address that a little bit is we have this concept of the system of record. And so what we do is we'll build our capabilities up underneath some existing system that's got those rules and that management infrastructure and all of that stuff already in place to try to be less of a tax on the management of it. So one we talk about a lot is SharePoint, for example, but it could be Jive, it could be Salesforce.com. It really doesn't matter to us, and it's embedded up underneath. It's not some web part where you still have to log out to some other system or go to some other server to manage it. It's all inside of there, so there's not much in the way of learning curve. In fact, one of our systems of record is Polycom CMS. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do that, but that's something that we do to try to minimize that a little bit.
And I think what everybody touched on is the analytics is super important, because a lot of the pullback is, well, what if a lot of people start watching it on their mobile devices? What if this is going to happen to our wireless network? So if you have the data on, well, we've seen the growth going from 5% mobile usage to 10% to 15%. If this trend continues, we're going to have to upgrade our access points or do something. If you have that data, then at least you can make intelligent decisions about it and not have something all of a sudden go wrong. So I think the analytics are really a key factor from the management perspective.
I was just going to add really quickly, as someone who was in product management, we kind of looked at it as like, okay, we work with you. You tell us first and foremost what your stakeholders want. So that's priority number one. Then it becomes, as Andy alluded to, some reporting and analytics which help quantify your contribution to the organization. Then you might have some sort of confidence monitoring, something that gives you, health feedback because you want to know if something bad really happened. Then there were workflow requirements, and then after that, it was like resource management. And so that was my prioritization as a product manager, working with teams in the enterprise. Oftentimes, we'd see third-party value-add, service providers bring in their own technology to kind of overlay what vendors were deploying. So they're important problems. It's just tough to drill down that far sometimes.
Because it was out of the box, it was accessible, and it was secure. So it met those requirements for us, whereas the HTML5 player, coming from our vendor at the time, did not meet those requirements.
So is that more vendor-specific driven or actually your choice?
We would have liked to have gone HTML5 out of the box, but it didn't meet our requirements. And again, our priority was being secure and going desktop first. So it wasn't a big deal to us, but it's going up there now in priority.
I think, and you probably hear this at a lot of the sessions, for PCs and Macs, Flash Player is still by far the player of choice. I mean, HTML5, everybody wants it, but it just doesn't have a lot of the functionality, so people can't deploy that as a sole solution. So if you have Flash fallback anyways, you might as well leverage a lot of the additional capabilities that the Flash Player provides you with. Now, obviously, that's not a case on mobile devices. I'm sorry?
Within an intranet.
Right.
Even on, ESPN.com, that's a Flash player that I get on my PC with Chrome. That's certainly an HTML5 browser. So, it's still very prevalent out there. Obviously not for mobile devices, but for the desktop and PCs and Macs.
I may have missed this because we were coming out of a special cancel. What was the timeline on Oracle's, hey, we realized we really need to do something about this, to when it was really implemented? What was that time scale?
Well, the initial goal was to do it within a year, and it took us a little over 2 years. So it took us longer than we expected. It was more challenging than we expected. We were working with competing priorities, other services and products being deployed, and trying to meet a moving target a little bit with respect to delivering on stakeholder needs within the organization, within the company. So a little over 2 years.
There's a lot of people that need to get involved to have a successful deployment. You're talking security, storage, networking, the internet networking. It's another kind of, that's something that you need to get people involved in up front, because you can't just run through the system and then say, oh, here it is, and then the networking guys would be like, what are you doing? This isn't secure, or whatever. Security people, you have to get those people involved up front.
I've got one more for you.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
We face that situation in our healthcare company, that we're in charge of doing digital video, and we're years behind in doing a lot of things. We're trying to create that business need. So what would you, from a executive business perspective, any of the two potentially answer, what's the biggest thing that we can do to communicate to the executives somewhere along that line? That we really need to start doing something, even if it is 2 years out, or it's going to be kind of thing. What's something that you think would help executives to understand the gravity of needing to do something to have better digital video?
I can jump in there if you
go
want to
ahead.
supplement. So we did that for a living. I mean, that was kind of how we drove our business, was to help create demand, especially when streaming was in its infancy. And I would say, foremost, it was learning to speak their language, which is often one that's quantifiable. And so as irritating as it would be to very creative people in studio groups who were creating very high-value content and very aesthetically pleasing content, you had to reduce it to something that fit onto an Excel spreadsheet. And so, you could pick one or two compelling applications that you thought could drag along everything else you wanted to do. So for instance, a CEO webcast can have an enormous ROI on a quarterly basis if you're paying 80 grand a quarter, 250 grand a quarter, whatever it was. I mean, back in the day, it was, hey, we're mailing out a physical prospectus to every shareholder, and we can replace that. That looks really good, even if you're deploying an entire infrastructure to support that. The risk for us was never that the ROI wouldn't make sense. It was that it was pretty scary deploying this stuff, and we didn't know if it was going to work right out of the box. So that was more the risk than justification. And I think if you can latch yourself whether it's in a mobile strategy environment, just a streaming adoption environment, whether it's some expansion, it's really got to resonate, I think, from either a cost-cutting or a revenue generation perspective, and replace something that's either really slow, really costly, or really ineffective. And that's why...
Or unsecure.
Yeah, where there's risk. And that's where the analytics can come in and really, really help you. Sure, it's boring, but when you can bring up a pie chart that says, hey, we've been able to increase, performance on these types of training videos, which in turn creates this type of uptick in the field, and we've seen revenues go up, and we believe we've contributed to that, that resonates as much as a marketing budget. I mean...
And I do think that today's workers are using video, whether you're putting in a platform for them or not, and the experience that Jeff said where video was showing up in Dropbox and shared folders, and go search on YouTube to find how many of your company's videos are up on there and whatnot. I think it's a problem that if it's not addressed, it's just going to get worse and compile.
I think another, I totally agree with what everybody's saying there. Another thing is look at your competition, talk to your competition. If you have some people in those companies, say, what are you guys doing? And then the fear of we're falling behind is often a very big instigator for, well, look at what this company's doing. We're not doing that, and their communications are so much better. One more question?
Yeah, David Boyle from Oracle. Great job, guys. I wondered, I was a latecomer too due to a canceled session. I wonder if you guys talked about looking in your crystal ball, native mobile apps versus web. Did you guys talk about that? If not, what's in the crystal ball in terms of?
We didn't. My perspective, what we see at Ramp is people are moving away from apps. They're going to responsive web design, microsite kind of stuff. So it just automatically fits on the screen and deals with all your resolutions and stuff. I don't know if you guys differ with that.
I think today, I just read something that like 86% of people's time is spent on apps versus the web. I think that's going to totally reverse. I think the app thing is just a placeholder until those devices become more capable and people understand how to, better deliver content to those devices. Because I agree. There's really no reason why I need to have a separate app on my phone. I've got a million of them, and I use about 5 of them. And I think but right now, if you really want to do certain things around video, it's very difficult to do that just in the browser interface, and that's why apps are filling that gap. And I think one great way that they could fill that is to add multicast capabilities to some of the players, so that this whole discussion about wireless streaming all being unicast can go away. And if you're downloading an app anyways, you might as well do that. So we're getting the hook here. We're out of time. There's a lunch coming up here at 12:30, which is right now. And thanks everybody for coming. Great questions, and thanks a lot to the panelists. That was great.